Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. The dialogue begins tailored around headline stories making the front cover of the dailies. Joining us virtually to lend his thoughts as we begin the conversations is a revered social commentator and public affairs analyst, Mr. Moses Idikia, who joins us virtually from the nation's capital. Hello, Mr. Moses. Good morning and welcome to the program.
My pleasure to be here as usual.
Now let's get straight into the conversations, and it's quite worrying. Many have called it fresh diplomatic tensions, but above all, it is new visa restrictions by the United Arab Emirates and the US that has made travel hopes for Nigerians even more dim. I don't know what you make of the new ban on transit visas by the UAE and the new rule of a single entry valid for 3 months for Nigerians looking to travel to the US. Let's get your thoughts, sir.
Well, it's a very, very unfortunate situation, and Nigeria has become, a laughing stock among nations. You see, the fact that the UAE now cannot even allow Nigerians to transit through their airports, not through their country per se. When you are on transit, you stop at the airport while either you are transferred to another flight or your flights, some people board your flight, then you continue with your journey. But it's unfortunate that Nigerians can't even be allowed to touch down on UAE soil while on transit to other countries. So it's a very, very unfortunate situation. And then United States is one of the prime destinations for Nigerians, especially young people, tourists, educationists, all manner of persons, business people. And the fact that what the 3-month visa regime they just imposed on Nigerian travelers means is that even with all the stress you go through to get a visa to the US for tourists or visiting or business, the moment you go, you have 3 months to use the visa. After the 3 months, when next you may want to go back for business or for any or for pleasure, you have to start all over again. Before now, people get visa for 3 years and more. But today, it's not like that. So, and that goes to show you what happens to Nigerians all over, how the being a Nigerian has become a problem to Nigerians. And this is just US and the UAE. It happens even in other African countries. In South Africa, a lot of Nigerians get turned back at the airports. So, and this goes to tell you how diminished Nigeria has become among the Community of Nations.
Now, talking about our diminishing status, why is it that we don't have this pride of place? What is making our status diminish, in your opinion?
Because Nigeria is a giant with clay foot. Our politicians, our government officials, our government policies, they don't place value on the life of an average Nigerian. In Nigeria today, you hear 20 killed, 100 killed, 50 killed, and we just move on as if it doesn't matter. In other countries, a death of a single person, gets presidential or prime minister's attention, and the institutions responsible to have prevented such death are brought to scrutiny. But in Nigeria, we hear every single day. So even if a life of Nigeria is not valid at home, how can the image, how the life of a Nigerian be valid abroad? So, and I think that for the only way out for Nigeria is for Nigerians actually to demand that they be governed like human beings in 2025, so that other people will also see us as a serious person. No country in this world today sees Nigeria as a serious country, and that is why all this is happening. Diplomatic, I can tell you, a lot of our foreign missions are empty for over a year now. No ambassadors, nobody. So Nigerians are just like IDPs, in global IDPs, internally displaced person. We are part of the planet, but we are displaced. We don't seem to have a place in it.
Well, we also saw a meeting of African leaders, certain African leaders converging in the US with President Donald Trump. One of the aspects of that meeting that has gone viral, which looks as though these problems that you've brilliantly highlighted are not just a Nigerian problem, but an African problem, is a compliment that many view as a little bit demeaning, which was issued by the US president to an African leader, where he says, "You speak somewhat good English." Is this just a Nigerian problem, or do you think that the US sees other African nations in line with such a compliment issued by President Donald Trump?
Well, to start with, Donald Trump in that video, I've seen it myself. Donald Trump just expresses arrant ignorance. Donald Trump is an ignorant man because if he's not ignorant, he should know that Africans speak English, they speak European languages, German, Portuguese, French, Italian. We have that colonial background that, gave us the opportunity of speaking more than our native tongues. So on that side, Donald Trump was just being himself, an ignorant and a man who glories in overbloated ego. But then when you come to the other side of it, the president, he's actually a president. You could see he was shaking and was telling him, let it in home. I think that's a Liberian president. So that is the condescending nature of our leaders, because when you don't have honor at home, it becomes very difficult for you to get honored abroad, because a lot of African leaders, because they are unable to stand their ground, help their country themselves. They get that kind of treatment in a Western capital, it could be in Paris, presidential palace. Their wives and their children start buying houses in those Western capitals. So those are the things that demean them and demean all of us as Africans on the global stage. Every African leader gets treated. If he has a malaria, he goes to America or Germany or France. Whatever happens to him, he travels abroad. So these are some of the things that make people like Trump to talk down condescendingly on African leaders and by extension all Africans.
Now, I would like to also refer to a reply to the situation, because the federal government seems to have issued its position on the travel restrictions. We'll just take a look at some of the talking points that are arising from this circular. Let me just quickly make reference to it before I ask my next question. So the circular has the subject, Statements by Nigeria on United States Visa Restriction. It is signed by the spokesperson, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Abuja, Kimiebi Ebinifa. It says the attention of the federal government of Nigeria has been drawn to the recent decision by the United States government to revise its visa reciprocity schedule for Nigerian citizens, limiting the validity of non-immigrant visas, including B1/B2, F and J categories, to 3 months with single entry. The federal government views this development with concern and keen interest, particularly given the long-standing cordiality between the two nations, strong people-to-people ties between the two countries. The decision appears misaligned with the principles of reciprocity, equity, and mutual respect that should guide bilateral engagement between friendly nations. Nigeria notes that this restriction places a disproportionate burden on Nigerian travelers, students seeking academic opportunities, professionals engaging in legitimate business, families visiting loved ones, and individuals contributing to cultural and educational exchanges. While acknowledging the sovereign rights of every country to determine its immigration policies, Nigeria respectfully urges the United States to reconsider the decision in the spirit of partnership, cooperation, and shared global responsibility. Diplomatic engagements are ongoing, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs remains committed to pursuing a resolution that reflects fairness and upholds the values of mutual interest. Signed, Kimi Ebi Ebinifa, spokesperson, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Abuja. Now, I know you've listened to the read, but I'd like to take out the paragraph 2 of this circular, and it's on reciprocity. If we have bilateral relationships like we claim, if we're to reciprocate this decision, how does the federal government take a stance on it?
Well, we can't respond because even before now, the government of the United States of America already advised their citizens against coming to Nigeria unless if it becomes very, very necessary. Even their diplomatic staff in Lagos and Abuja and other associate U.S. companies and agencies in Nigeria have been advised to avoid traveling to certain places in Nigeria, including some parts of Abuja, the federal capital of Nigeria. So we can't respond because Nigeria has very little to offer the United States.
So if I understand you, Mr. Moses, correctly, it seems as though we're now the ones at the US's mercy. We're now begging, and the laws of reciprocity cannot function in this regard. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we have always been begging because we do not have the strength to reciprocate in the manner that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is saying in that letter. The letter has no strength. There is no way we can respond. We can't. We are begging United States of America to patronize our crude oil. We are not manufacturing anything that we are selling to the US. So you can't restrict. You can't say if you don't do this, we won't do this. So we are definitely not in a position to respond to the United States. The only thing we can do is to go cap in hand, just like the letter has said, that we humbly seek. So, and we will continuously be humbling to seek for forgiveness or for accommodation or for patronage from Western countries like the US, because we have refused to have our own homegrown economy that will not depend entirely on the patronage of outsiders.
Now, let's move on to the second angle to this conversation. It is now on part of the misgivings of the current administration. It's been viewed from 2 years under the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, and we're yet to have official ambassadors assigned to some of those countries where we're having trouble gaining entries. How much of a role has the lack of ambassadorial appointments played in our bilateral relationship with these countries that have now imposed stricter travel restrictions on Nigerians?
Yes, I mentioned that earlier, that a lot of Nigerian foreign missions are currently empty. It is only Nigerian foreign missions that they owe their staff, they owe rents. Nigeria as a country has not presented itself as a responsible nation, even in those foreign lands, because for you to be a responsible citizen or a responsible visitor, a responsible guest, you have to abide by the laws of your host. And such laws is that when you have an agreement, you are owing a rent, you are going to pay, you pay, and you pay as and when due. So, and in 2 years, the federal government of Nigeria has been unable to deploy diplomatic staff, ambassadors to all those foreign nations, including some African countries. Initially, they said something like they are trying to streamline it. Maybe in some, like you have EU, we have a mission in Nigeria overseeing probably the entire ECOWAS region. That Nigeria wanted to adopt that kind of measure as a cost-saving measure. But all of that is just talk. The government is confused. They can't solve problem at home. So it's not even anticipated that they should solve problem abroad. So, and that is what is causing all this. If you're a Nigerian and you run into trouble in any foreign land, there is no way to go. And you have to rely on charity and some lawyers to be able to help you out, because we do not have functional missions all over in those countries.
Now, Mr. Moses, I'd like to ask, is that excuse tenable? Do you see sense in saying it is too expensive to afford foreign missions and the roles of ambassadors in this nation under our current dispensation?
It has never been. That is international politics. If you have to be like Nigeria prides itself as a big brother in Africa, but a big brother who can't even pay his rent in an African country is not a big brother. So, and that is, mind you, a lot of Nigerian government officials, they buy houses in those capitals with stolen money, public funds. Their children live lavish lifestyle in all those places. Yet the country is unable to maintain diplomatic relations in those countries by keeping a consulate, or or an embassy. So there is no excuse. There is absolutely no excuse, and I think Nigerians should begin to really take the government to task, because we are not just being disgraced at home, we are now being disgraced all over the world.
Now let's look at it from this other angle. Whilst we're having troubles with the US and UAE, the president Bola Ahmed Tinubu has decided to strengthen bilateral relations with Caribbean islands. I saw some critics reacting to it and saying that those nations are even smaller than a certain Lagos in Nigeria. Why the priority going after the likes of St. Lucia, whilst we have other bigger fish to fry?
Yes, perhaps the president wants to purchase a holiday home, or some of his cronies and aides. They want to. They are just gallivanting, because I'm not saying that those South American countries, or those countries are not important. They are important, but even America, that is very close to them, they are just like outposts. So you don't go chasing after a rat when your house is burning. You are not strengthening ties with China. You are not strengthening ties with EU. You are not strengthening ties with US, Brazil, Argentina. Countries that can impact our economy, that can impact our human resources. We are strengthening ties with countries that will rely on us to supply teachers, to supply nurses, because those countries there, they don't even have as much as we do. So I think the president is playing the ostrich here, and it is unfortunate.
Well, quite interesting times. We'll keep our eyes on these conversations. We don't know if before the end of the first 4-year term of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, at some point, the federal government might change its approach of having consulates or embassies and ambassadors in some of these countries where we have troubles. But if you recall, at some point, there was also the controversy with a statement issued by the federal government over amended relationships with the UAE. The president also visited the UAE, if I remember correctly, but months down the line, we're still back to this conversation. Do you think that it is optics in some sorts, or there's still work going under the ground to fix these issues?
No, I think it's all optics, because these countries are very serious nations. They have their strict rules governing business dealings, tourism, and the rest of it. Dubai is one of the most visited places on earth today. And if other countries and their nationals can fly into Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and the rest of the Middle East, and then without any restrictions, without any inconveniences, why can't Nigerians do so? But even the Nigerian government is unable to keep to basic rules. Recall that there was a COP10 or an event held in Dubai, in UAE, at the early times of President Tinubu's government, and almost the entire cabinet were in Dubai for that event. And that is the kind of thing that you see. And that is at the highest level of government in Nigeria. Everybody went there, domestic staff, all manner of human beings. And these countries, they are serious. If you are coming in for business, declare what you are coming to do your business, and go back. If you are coming as a tourist, you come as a tourist, you spend your time, you go back to your country. That is as simple as that. But Nigeria, even at the highest level, they are not able to obey such basic rules, and this is what has caused all of this. And when you bring it home, Nigeria has become anti-business. You can't build any business in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians, you go to school, you can't find job, you learn basic skills, you can't even practice it. So every Nigerian is just looking out anywhere to go. So they rely on their visa applications, they forge all manner of documents. So, and the government is unable to do so to control such at home. Because of this situation, Nigeria and Nigerians will continue to be ridiculed abroad.
Now let's move on to the issues of business and failing businesses. Sticking with aviation stories, just a couple of days ago we saw the commissioning of Enugu Air. This morning there's a headline by aviation experts reacting to other states where huge investments have been sunk in achieving airports. Now the headline is that some of these airports and investments are unviable and unprofitable. What do you talk when you talk about the aviation industry in Nigeria and this airports and new airlines springing up? Do you agree with this headline on the unviability of some of these investments?
Ordinarily, having an airport is like one of the building blocks of creating a smooth and a competitive business environment. However, the fact why some of these airports and airlines are not viable is because the economy itself is not viable. Because today, for you to fly from Abuja to Enugu is close to 200,000 naira. Every single 35 minutes an hour flight in Nigeria is costed between 150 and 250,000. And this is a country that the minimum wage is 70,000 that the government is not paying. People in the private sector are paid 40,000, 30,000. So who are these persons that will fly in these aircraft? So, and who are these persons that are going to use the airport? So the unviability of the airport, it's not because of the allocation, it's because the economy itself is unable to carry it. However, I am one of the, for example, the land is not safe. You can't easily travel to a place like Yola or even Makurdi from Abuja or Jos. So definitely there has to be airports in those places, but Nigerians should be able to afford to fly on those planes. So the problem is not necessarily that the people at government at state level, subnationals are sinking money into building airports. There are necessary infrastructure for economic development. It's just like roads, because the business world is changed. So everybody cannot go by road, but the economy itself is not strong enough to carry this investment. So we should be looking at how can the state and the federal government make Nigeria a country that is economically viable, that Nigerians can, create businesses in their own country, in their community, and those businesses thrive. So that is the issue with the aviation sector vis-a-vis those new airports and airlines.
Now let's look at some of the key figures here. As of the last count, data says that out of 19 states, a total amount of over 369 billion has been invested. Now, the FAN MD is on record of saying that only 3 states have profitable airports, and you have brilliantly said the correlation between the earning power of Nigerians to be able to patronize these airlines. How do we achieve a situation where air travel, in spite of the cost of aviation fuel, is somewhat as affordable as it used to be just about 5 years ago, when the cost of flying was nowhere close to 50,000 naira?
You know that this government of President Bola Tinubu came in and in a braggadocio of showing strength and courage, dismantled the economy, devalued the naira, removed fuel subsidy instead of creating sanity in the fuel subsidy system, and then everything collapsed. So I think until the economy is brought back on track, that is the only way. This is not rocket science. Some countries have thousands of airports. Not United States of America. We know in America they have over 5,000 airports, but there are other countries too that have such airports. There are even private airports where small aircraft, private jets land, not necessarily the big commercial Boeings and CRJs and the rest of them. But the thing is, until Nigeria becomes a productive country, look at our agricultural sector, for example. Every Nigerian government is telling you we are boosting agriculture, diversification of the economy, solid mineral sector. But there is actually no investment. As at this moment, there is no policy on mechanizing agriculture in Nigeria. So that sector is continuously struggling. As we speak, the solid mineral sector is a chaos. It's fueling crisis in communities all across the country. The government is unable to rein in the crisis in that sector. So when you look at it, there are basic steps that should be taken by government to ensure that all these things are sorted out, but they are unable to do it. And that is why Nigerians, as we approach the next election, we should begin to really question and bring government officials to account for their stewardship.
Now, talking about government officials, in a shocking turn of events, the former national chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, who resigned that position on health grounds, has now been appointed as the chairman of FAN board. What do you make of this, Mr. Moses?
Well, of course, that we keep talking about these things. Ganduje, the former governor of Kano State, announced that he was resigning to go and take care of his health, that he was not feeling well. Of course, he's an old man. But we knew at that point that it was the shock waves of the forthcoming election that chased him out of office. And today, we just finished talking about the aviation sector, and a man who said publicly that he was ill is now appointed to chair the board of Nigeria's Federal Airport Authority. And that tells you that this is not a government that is ready to change things, because a Ganduje who, by his own saying, is sick, is somebody you brought to supervise the aviation sector in Nigeria. And it is unfortunate. Of course, it's just the normal capitulation of the Nigerian government, and of course the facts are out there that the government does not mean well for that sector, for any sector at all.
Well, let's move on to another issue, and it brings us now to focus on the National Assembly. Following 1.3 trillion naira lost by vulnerable Nigerians to a Ponzi scheme, CBEX, the Senate in its most recent deliberations have tasked the federal government on the need to protect vulnerable Nigerians. They've also faulted the frameworks under the Central Bank of Nigeria and Security Exchange Commissions, which they say are not tight enough, that have allowed for such financial predators to take advantage of unsuspecting Nigerians. What do you make about this legislative intervention?
Well, talk is cheap, and the National Assembly, we always talk because they have that oversight power to talk to the executive to get some things done right. But this is not the first time. Recently, we had the cryptocurrency firm that came. Somebody got arrested, detained in the office of the National Security Advisor, and the person escaped
miraculously
from the office of from the office of Nigerian National Security Advisor. And these Ponzi schemes, it's always been there. The biggest problem we have is that we have very weak regulatory system. The CBN is the only thing the CBN is able to do is to use the commercial bank to deduct taxes from Nigerians, from recharge card sellers, from POS operators. But when it comes to regulating the financial sector in such a way that Nigerians are protected, the CBN is unable to do it. It's just like NAFDAC that should regulate what we consume in the country. But Nigeria is a country that has most of the goods you purchase out there, 70 to 80% are fake. So because the agencies saddle with the responsibility of protecting the people, they are not, able to do their job. So it's unfortunate. The National Assembly will only talk. The Senate, the House of Representatives, they can speak all the English, they can give all the orders, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, such funds have gone because we've not had any history of any recovery. We have an NDIC, Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, that should protect Nigerians. Even major commercial banks that failed, I doubt if their customers ever recovered their funds. So that is why that we have all these issues, because when you are unable to protect your child in your house, you do not expect the man or woman out there to protect the child for you. And it's a very, very unpalatable situation.
Well, let's see if we can squeeze in more topics to discuss before our time is finally up. Still sticking with the interventions of the National Assembly, the Senate has talked about criminalizing power installation in just less than a minute. They've also amended the Electricity Act of 2023. What do you make of this?
Well, it's just been amended. It's not law yet, but the National Assembly has been unable to also protect Nigerians from, these Shylock electricity distribution companies. People don't even know what band they belong to. People are lumped into all manner of bands and ripped off. And then you complain, you don't get any results. However, as Nigerians, as a patriotic Nigeria, I still believe that we can still make things happen. We can still redeem our country, but all Nigerians must be, very, very vigilant and be ready to get these people to work. They are working at our expense, be it in the National Assembly, be it the judiciary, be it the executive themselves. We must call them to account.
Well, Mr. Moses, we must thank you for taking out time to begin these conversations with us. We appreciate you. We're wishing you the best of the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.